Okay. Well, hey, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, pleasure.
So, before we get into your work, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this global pandemic changed so many things for all of us. How did you ultimately get through that time period, and how has it affected the way that you live life and do your work today?
Interesting question. I never get it, but it's quite interesting how much we've all forgotten that the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like barely there.
Yeah.
Um, I had quite an experience because I actually in 20, end of 2019 I moved from New York to the Caribbean to the north coast of Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
and I had this idea that we're going to kind of like revitalize the town we moved to some degree, and so I started an event series that was planned for March 2020. If you remember what happened in March 2020,
Yeah.
and it was a beachfront sort of. We rented out a resort, and it was like a kind of future of humanities focused sort of gathering, kind of small summit, mostly entrepreneurs and investors. And I had that in preparation. At the same time, I was running a digital agency that has been remote since its inception in 2014. And so a bunch of interesting things happened. So firstly, the event was, I think, it started on March 9th and ended on 16th. And I think the market crashed, if I remember correctly, on 12th or 13th.
Yeah.
And so we were basically, people came from even Australia, all around the world. And and there were like, some murmurs of a pandemic and so on, kind of like reaching Japan, China, and Italy, but not really in the West.
Yeah.
And suddenly the markets crash, and we are in a place where, flights get canceled, the world is changing. We've got those 60 people on the island. We're like, everyone's panicking. People are saying they're not going back home, they're staying on the island. We're looking to buy a farm. And it was quite an adventure. We got actually accused initially in the media of bringing the virus to the island, to Dominican Republic. But then it turned out, luckily, that it was not us. Because a lot of people came from around the world. We actually didn't have any cases among the guests, but we had like a crazy PR fallout after that, and we had to handle that, and felt dangerous. We weren't sure if people are gonna attack us for doing that. We're the first people with masks
Yeah.
in the country, in the whole area, and um, and the event was called Future Horizon, and it really was a future horizon for many people. So,
Yeah.
many of the guests who never went to another event for another 18 months, and so everyone got kind of inspired to co-create the future together, and so we started building nonprofits, and we've launched a whole bunch of different nonprofits after that, and they grew because people had time. You had time and attention. We could never repeat that after. During that time, they had time, attention. There was a lot of liquidity in the markets, and so we were able to raise a lot of money, like $200 million plus for nonprofits, and so it was a groundbreaking, breaking, incredible time. At the same time, my company has always been remote, and it's a professional services digital agency. It was right. Since then, we've moved on to the next one, but um, but basically, we were very prepared, and
Yeah.
so it was a great time in business for me. Um, and I ended up moving from there to Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico was less stringent. I loved kite surfing. They wouldn't even let us kite surf in Dominican Republic. They would chase us with helicopters, and cops would chase us on motorbikes, and so it was like madness. And so we moved to Puerto Rico. Then I moved to Mexico. Then I moved to Brazil, and I just kind of followed the countries that didn't really treat COVID seriously,
Yeah. Yeah.
in a way, and lived there, sort of waiting for it to end.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis right now in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds
Yeah.
olds in a grade school. It's career day, and one of the kids is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
That's you've got a great way of asking questions.
Thanks.
What do I do for a living is we make companies run faster and more effectively and more efficiently by implementing AI that works. Which means not just AI tools and flashy agents and stuff like that. We build things into the core so we kind of truly understand where some blockers are or inefficiencies or broken systems, and we fix them. So we're kind of like a special squad that comes in, and we ourselves are what we kind of build in. So we are fully AI augmented. We've got an entire AI platform we've built to help our service delivery, and so we can do it fast and very efficiently and very effectively.
So when you were 12 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream job?
I think I wanted to be an architect. But that was kind of like coming from my parents. I'm not sure if that was I had like kind of like an idea when I was 10 years old, maybe at 11. The idea was that I would be an architect. I am from Poland originally, which you can partly hear in my accent, but I've moved through a lot of countries, so it got a bit messed up. But my idea was that I'm gonna, when I'm 18, I'm gonna move to Germany for some reason. That was the idea. And then I'm gonna build an architecture company for 10 years, and then I'm gonna cash out from it, and I'm gonna move to Oceania, like the islands around Australia somewhere, and plant marijuana and ride horses. I think that's what was in my mind when I was 11. I did not quite execute that plan, but I remember I had a specific sort of path forward at the time.
So how did this happen? How take me back to your childhood. What were the seeds that were planted, the foundational elements that gave you so much motivation, that gave you this vision of being high achieving and successful in your life? How did that happen?
Uh, I mean, I think I was just born a sort of troubled in a way, but also over like a highly capable child in a way, which meant that I was initially the best at every school I went to, and won the kind of Olympics in math and language and whatnot. And then eventually I started getting into drugs and partying and drinking a lot when I was a teenager, which was probably misguided and not the best use of my talents. But I guess I needed it at the time. And then after that, closer to 20, I ended up sort of cleaning that path up, and I founded my first company at 19. But there was like a period when I think, yeah, I started drinking and smoking weed when we were 12 or something. It's not the
Yeah,
not the best, not the best. I don't think I was making my parents happy.
yeah.
But that's what happened, and then later, I sort of kind of managed to balance it out, and I've just always had like a pretty high output, and I think the architecture thing was actually coming from the source of um, my parents just observing that I was kind of good at math and good at drawing things. So I think that's just where it came from. And then later I understood that or thought that digital actually gives me much more opportunity. And like if I'm an architect, I'm probably not going to be a star architect.
Yeah.
While in digital, you can achieve a lot more just doing building apps and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about who's been an inspiration, who's been that hero that's fueled you to become who you are.
Hmm. I think there were different heroes at different times of my journey. I think I don't have like one person that I've kind of followed. It's more so different ones. But I think Richard Branson, whom I got to know, who gave an official endorsement for my book, who I've had great pleasure, cycling around mountains with and chatting about great many things, and also being on his island. I think he's been quite inspiring, maybe more so than many others. Um, yeah.
So let me ask you this. When you look at your day typically, what's your philosophy on taking care of your own soul and doing the best work that you can? Do you find some level of like equilibrium, or how does that work for you? What's your philosophy on work-life balance?
Um, I'm a sort of like work hard, play hard kind of person, and so I run in sprints. I don't have like this kind of like marathon approach to work. I have tried, but it's not me. So I tend to work a lot and then take big vacations and travel. And I've once taken 3 years to travel around the world. Um, but um, but I think it has evolved a lot. Meditation has been incredibly important for me. Finding meditation, finding the balance, finding the ability to be present. And then, I did that for a few years, and then we built a whole meditation platform used by hundreds of thousands of people, Maloka. And in the process of building that, I had to meditate for work every day. So I had to test it. It doesn't work, because of the experience, like, does it? And so I sort of meditated myself out, I feel like. And I've arrived at the place where I am now, which is my daily rebalancing act is an afternoon nap, and it's as simple as that. It's a morning workout and an afternoon nap, and that's all I need actually in the end, and it really does feel balanced. And so I've sort of, I used to have like a full-on routine, I would wake up, make the bed, workout, make a tea, write morning notes, the journal. I would, kind of follow this rhythm for like a couple of years and meditate, of course, it would take over an hour or sometimes longer. But I think ultimately an afternoon nap is what sort of resets the day for me and allows me to regain a lot of energy. And it can be as short as 15 minutes.
Isn't that the idea of the siesta, though, in Spain? That idea of a midday break is because we don't know that in America. I mean, it's not
No,
something that's woven in, but it
yeah.
seems like they do really well with balancing and feeling good about life. Maybe Americans should adopt that.
Yeah, especially in the south, because I guess it's driven by the weather. It's just when it's so hot during the day that you can't do anything in the south of Spain.
Yeah,
And I used to live in Spain, and it's just like you just can't, even
yeah,
if things were open, it's not fun. And I think more of the warm places could adopt that. I think south of the US definitely. Um, yeah, I think who knows? I think that's probably a good rhythm, but then you kind of need everyone to adjust. You can't do
yeah,
it by yourself because every place has their time. Like Spanish love to eat at dinner at like 11 p.m., right, or midnight. It's more of like a kind of New Yorkish, I would say,
yeah,
in the US approach. Otherwise, it's not so common. Like you eat at, I don't know, at 7.
yeah,
You can't do, if everyone's having dinner, if restaurants close at 10,
yeah.
you can't do that, right? And so yeah, it depends.
So let me ask you this. The heart of a true successful entrepreneur is to take risks. When you look at your life and all these travels and everything that you've done on your career timeline, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Mhm. Good question. The biggest risk that I've taken. I think the biggest risk that I've taken was leaving Silicon Valley and going traveling.
Yeah.
The risk was that I will never have a proper career. I will lose my contact with tech, that I will fall out of the cycle that moves really fast, that I will kind of sacrifice my future for a fleeting moment of enjoying my life. I think that was probably the biggest risk because I had great opportunities there. I was just exiting my company I've built for years, and I had great opportunities, but I felt like I needed to see the world, and it has been the most rewarding thing I've done because I've gone from like somewhat depressed, sort of high pressure entrepreneur to someone who kind of discovered happiness and balance and great many things, and I wouldn't be who I am without it. And so I'd say that was perhaps the biggest risk.
So of all of the travels that you've been on around the globe, What is one of the most unexpectedly magical places that you've been to that you absolutely loved?
Unexpectedly is the key element here
Yeah,
because there are many magical places, but you also kind of know that they're magical. Um, I spent 3 weeks in that like deep Amazon jungle,
yeah,
and I think I did not expect how loud and alive and intense it is. Just, I think it's a warm forest with some rain, but it's so alive. I mean, there's something looking at you everywhere or crawling on you, or like, if you shine a light, it's just there are eyes everywhere. And in the evenings, the noise is like a starting jet of like all the, different creatures living on the trees. So I would say that was, and similarly, Borneo, um, I think was Equatorial Guinea had a lot of surprises for me.
yeah,
It's like an interesting place that like you couldn't enter that country until this year, I think. We were lucky enough to go there with a group of travelers and I think an expected place that's incredibly magical. I mean, like many people know about it, is like a valley in Myanmar.
yeah,
I think it's called Bagan, and there are like 3,000 temples, and you can fly a balloon over those at sunrise.
yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Wow.
3,000 temples, like ancient temples, one next to another, up to the horizon, like a morning mist.
Wow,
Yeah,
that would be amazing. Yeah. So
highly.
let me ask you this. When you look back on your life, I'm going to put it into context here. Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart on that younger version of you?
Listen to others more. Don't try to carve out everything by yourself. I've wasted a lot of time making my own mistakes, and I could have not repeated other people's mistakes. Um, Probably, like actually go to it because I had like I was accepted into MIT when I was a teenager, but I was like a poor boy from Poland, and like there was zero chance I could afford it. So I went to study in Ireland instead. But I could have probably made that happen somehow.
Yeah.
And so like if I hustled more, I could have probably done that. And I think that would be a far more pivotal kind of, thing in my life than a school in Ireland, which I dropped out from anyway was and yeah I think those two things so kind of like maybe it's humility.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What is it that of everything that you've done, everything that you've accomplished in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Finding my wife.
Yeah.
Took me a long time and she's great.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you were to walk into a room of everybody that you've worked with in your life, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you in a business sense, and you could walk to a podium in front of that room and tell them one fun story, a fun adventure, a cool place you went to, jumping out of an airplane, the balloon over all the temples. If you could tell them a really fun story that might humanize you a little bit more to them and see you in a different light, what would be a fun story you would tell them?
No, wow, no preparation. So I get to that stage of zero prep. That's uh
We can come back to it. I can ask another one. We can come back.
um hmm, there are a lot of stories. I think Yeah, I think I already started going that direction. I've sort of I disagree with the idea that you make a lot of money and then you do philanthropy.
Yeah.
And and so I've for a long time I've always tried to do both business and nonprofit and make, impact and change the world for better. And I think that pandemic moment actually that I described earlier of starting those gatherings, that has evolved into like a series of gatherings that happen to this day.
Yeah.
It has definitely taken me through some really difficult times, but also absolutely incredible moments when we've organized events in like Rio de Janeiro and Tuscan castles and so on. And you've really made some difference while I lost a lot of money. And I think it was worth it,
Yeah.
I think it was absolutely worth every step of it. I don't know if that's the kind of pivotal story, but the way it began with the pandemic and the actual horizon, I think that's
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
one I would share. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a great story. Let me ask you this, Matt. Everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Should probably ask my chat GPT. It knows more
Yeah,
than
that's right.
I. Uh, uh, um, I'm curious. I think that is like the core part of my personality. It, it took me some time sometimes to adjust my, entrepreneurial activity to times, right? Like it has happened twice before that I launched something way too early, like 8 years or 10 years too early. And then the times came, and I sort of missed the window. And so I think I'm curious, and I always look what's around the corner, and I can always kind of, and it's not coming out of trying to predict things. It's more so like, oh, there's something emergent here, and that's interesting. And I think that has led me to build like a digital art platform, long before the NFT boom. It led me to start a fully remote agency, which was probably the first or one of the first back in 2014. And he has led me to start a fully AI-powered professional services company 3 years ago, when most professional services companies are only kind of awakening to it right now. And so I think and hopefully that's better timed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm just curious generally. Like that's what led me to travel and exploring, various things about myself and the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to reach out, they have questions for you about future works, what you're doing, any of the good business, where's the best place for them to go?
I think the best place is lead.guide because there you can find a bit about me. You can find my contact. So you can just email me. It's at the bottom of the page, my LinkedIn, and the 2 books that I published recently.
Okay. Excellent. Matt, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. I'm so glad that we had the chance to run into each other today to get this done. So thank you so much and best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I love the background.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.